How's it going, guys? It's Paul Myers, licensed professional counselor, owner and lead therapist of Intentional Counseling, and we are a group practice. We're specializing in mental health, and we're in Frisco, Texas. And today I'm going to cover one of the childhood imprints from one of my favorite books, How We Love. I'll put a link to that book in the description if you guys want to purchase it for yourselves. But I'm going to cover an overview highlight of the Vacillator Imprint. So in the book it talks about different childhood environments and how our childhood environment impacts our romantic relationships. And so the Vacillator Imprint is one of those childhood environments where the parents are very inconsistent. So what we're going to do, we're going to cover the parenting style that in the childhood environment that creates this imprint. We're going to talk about the symptoms of the imprint and the characteristics of the imprint, and we're going to talk about the resolution and the cure, how to combat and beat that imprint to fix it. So we have parenting style. The parents, usually with this type of environment, they're really inconsistent, they're really unstable, they're really unpredictable, and it's mostly on the parents' terms. So there's some love and there's some bond and there's some connection that's really powerful, but it's really unreliable and unpredictable for the child. And so what happens is the child hopes and longs for a deep connection, but they never really know when that's going to occur. And so there's always these high hopes and then a hypersensitivity to rejection or any kind of abandonment or anything like that. So that's kind of the parenting style there. So some bond, but on the parents' terms, it's inconsistent, it's unpredictable, it's unreliable, and typically it's based on the parent's mood rather than based on the needs of the child, okay? So then we have symptoms of the Vacillator style. The key characteristic is very, very high expectations in relationships. The expectations are very unrealistic. For that vacillator, they're really hoping that this relationship will give them all of their needs and will be the opposite of what they're accustomed to with their relationships with their parents, and that it'll be the positive aspect of their relationship with their parents without the negative aspect. So there's a lot of expectation that comes with this style. And so what happens with those high expectations, they tend to really idolize their spouse, and they tend to overvalue their new relationship that they have. Relationships for the vacillators that are new start off with lots of passion, lots of fireworks, and it's really intense. But then as the relationship newness wears off, the vacillators really struggle with that, and they tend to think that there's something wrong with the relationship, when it's really just normal, right? Just infatuation ends. So what happens is they have high expectations, they idolize new relationships, and then what happens is those new relationships are not new, and there's always going to be a disappointment or a hurt because we're human, we have flaws. So we're gonna hurt each other, whether it's intentional or not. And so those hurts and disappointments are really extreme and extra potent for a vacillator because it reminds them of some of those childhood rejections, disappointments, and neglect that they're accustomed to. And that sense of disappointment is really, really potent and extreme. So vacillators tend to think in black and white. So they're only focused on their spouse's flaws a lot of the time and not the good, or they're only focused on the good and not the flaws. And they have a very hard time seeing both simultaneously. So typically on a vacillator's perspective, they can only focus on one at a time. So it's going to be focused on mostly flaws when they're feeling hurt and disappointment and pain, and they're very angry, or only on their spouse's positive qualities, ignoring the negative, and when they're idolizing and romanticizing their spouse. Okay? So very black and white thinking. So then a lot of the time vacillators will be very resentful and spiteful. So they tend to vacillate between idolizing their spouse and then looking down on their spouse and being resentful and hurt. They tend to punish their spouse and be a bit vicious and a bit spiteful with their anger when they're hurt and disappointed. And so they go back and forth and create this push-pull style of relating to their spouse, right? So the key component is unrealistic romanticizing of love and relationships, of high hopes, guaranteeing disappointment, which guarantees a lot of anger and resentment, which creates a push-pull style. They don't realize it's very subconscious. No one realizes they're doing this. It's just natural and from their past, and it's not something that people think about a lot of the time. So one last symptom is that vacillators are really overly aware of how their spouse is being close to them or distant from them emotionally. So if they're feeling really close to their spouse, they're very aware of that. They're very happy. If they're feeling that their spouse is pulling away from them and distant, they get very hurt by that and they're overly aware of that. So when it may very well just be something that has nothing to do with them, right? So it's good to keep in mind those symptoms. That's kind of the characteristics and of that style. Very problematic, as you guys can imagine. And so we have the resolution to the style. That's the bad news. The good news is, what do we do about it? How do we get better? How do we get healthy? So number one thing with vacillation, the anger that comes from the disappointment usually just pushes your spouse away further. Anger is the only emotion that's really non-vulnerable, and it pushes people away and creates an unsafe environment. And so rather than expressing anger, and it's okay to feel anger, but expressing the anger has the opposite effect of what they're looking for. They're actually looking for closeness, but the anger has very counterproductive to that goal. Okay? So instead of being angry, we're trying to share the hurt that's underneath that anger. That's much more realistic, it's much more real, it's much more authentic, and it really gets to the core of what you're really feeling, which means we can actually address some of that. Okay? Next is vulnerability. So being vulnerable requires you to share your fears, share your desire for connection, share your hurts and disappointments, and just be open and real, and that creates an opportunity to connect, which is really what they're looking for, is that connection. What they do not want is to push their spouse away and not be vulnerable out of anger, and then you never really get your needs met that way. Okay? So next solution is going to be communicating expectations very clearly. Vacillators have very high expectations. We just mentioned that's one of the key components. So one of the symptoms is to lower those expectations to be more realistic, obviously. That is another cure, is lowering expectations. But then the expectations you do have, you really want to communicate clearly. That clear expectations will help give your spouse a fighting chance, somewhat, and give them a better chance of actually meeting your needs. And they won't meet all of your needs, but they'll meet more of your needs if you're communicating that clearly. Sometimes you have to even figure out what you expect. Most people don't even know what they expect. So try to really do some introspection, look deep into your heart, be real and vulnerable with yourself, and try to be honest about what it is you're really needing and looking for, and whether it's realistic or not, right? And communicate what you need in a very direct way, okay? Forgiveness is another huge aspect to any good marriage, any good relationship. Vacillators in particular struggle with forgiveness because they hold on to past hurts. So choosing forgiveness regularly creates a prime environment for healing and grace, which will be healthy and needed in any good marriage, okay? The last thing is not blaming and punishing your spouse for past hurts from your parents, but instead realizing that your sensitivity comes from your parents. So it's got nothing to do with your spouse more so than it has to do with you're really hurt by your parents, and there's some sensitivity there, okay? So all of that is the Vacillation Style Imprint. Hopefully you find that helpful. Please leave your comments below if you relate to this. If you don't have a therapist, we'll be happy to help you. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Take care.